This is a bizarre video from the co-founder of Kalshi, which is a prediction market. We'll go into what that means later. Let's first look at the clip, which has gone viral on Twitter this week.
Tarek, you've mentioned multiple times that you think prediction markets will be bigger than the stock market. What is it going to take to become a $1 trillion asset class?
It's pretty much already like a close to 100 billion a year asset class, right? Like, it's pretty easy to imagine a 10x from here. Like, we haven't even started. It's been a year. I think a very large number of people care, much larger than traditional markets. And I think retail as a pie has just been growing in the US, and I think it's going to keep growing. It's growing in the stock market, but it's growing outside of the stock market. The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion.
So that was Tarek Mansour, co-founder and CEO of Kalshi. It's basically a betting website, actually, but you can bet on political events. So the quote there that I think sort of outraged everyone was him saying, "The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion." I can't really imagine a more dystopian sentence. We'll talk about that in a moment. First of all, though, this did pique my interest in prediction markets, how they could possibly be bigger than the stock market, which is what he seemed to be suggesting could be in store in the near future. So Kalshi, which is that gentleman's company, describes itself as a prediction market for trading the future. That's sort of the tagline on their website. This is what you see if you go on their website. So all sorts of things you can bet on: the next US presidential election winner, will the Fed change interest rates in December. As you can see, there's $21 million betted on the Fed decision. Still only $4 million on the next US presidential election, but that's in quite a long time. And then you've got things like, will Trump release any of the Epstein files? And then you always have an end date. So if you've said no or yes, then it cashes out when the deadline comes. So there's loads and loads of people investing on, to be honest, most of their money I think comes from sports betting, but then lots of the I suppose the publicity comes from the betting on political events. The more famous prediction market, the one I'd heard of before this week, is Polymarket. So this is what's on Polymarket's website at the moment. So $13 million has been bet on whether Elon Musk tweets between 240 and 250 or 260 and 270 tweets. So you can see what's going on here. Will Maduro be overthrown? Sort of all these different events that may or may not take place in the world by a deadline, and you vote whether or not it will happen. And obviously, if you get it right, you win back some money. Prediction markets are big business. So Polymarket and Kalshi basically came from nowhere at the start of 2024. But in the week running up to the US election last year, there were almost $2 billion worth of bets placed in a single week. Bets subsided after that, as you can imagine, but there's now $1.2 billion worth of weekly bets on Kalshi and $1 billion, again, weekly on Polymarket. So that adds up to a lot of money. As you can see, this is a growing industry. It's making its founders a lot of money. So Kalshi is currently valued at $11 billion, which has made its co-founder, former ballerina Luana Lopez Lara, into the world's youngest self-made billionaire. Not everyone is relaxed about this surge in activity, though. The Bank of America last month warned that gambling on prediction markets was creating new credit risks, as reported in Bloomberg. You can see here, they warned, says the Bank of America, that the negative financial effects of these wagers may be most pronounced for low-income consumers and especially for young men. Easy access and gamified interfaces encourage frequent and impulsive wagers, wrote a Bank of America strategist or strategists. For investors, this convergence of entertainment and speculative finance signals heightened behavioral risk that could pressure credit quality, increase delinquencies, and impact earnings for issuers and some prime lenders. This is a tale as old as time. You don't really need very sort of expensive analysts to tell you that when people gamble, they're more likely to go into debt or not pay back their debts, as with any form of gambling. Some participants, though, are making a killing. 60 Minutes recently did a report on Polymarket.
I don't think of myself as a gambler. I'm taking very, very well-researched views on things. I feel like it's much more akin to investing.
Betting is Domer's full-time job. He said he made nearly $3 million last year on Polymarket. He used to be a professional poker player, but gave it up. Prediction markets, he says, are more exciting.
Every day I'm kind of going into battle.
You wake up, I don't
yeah.
drink coffee and you're in battle.
You are wrong. I look at my phone within 5 seconds of waking up. What have I missed? My phone is my coffee. What has happened overnight? Yeah. Because the news doesn't sleep.
Did you bet on the papal conclave?
Yes, for sure.
A papal conclave is a hermetically sealed environment. Information does not get out.
Right.
Nobody was putting money down that there'd be an American pope, but you were.
Yeah, and his odds were 250 to 1. So he was a super, super, super long shot.
He won $100,000 on the Pope, and even more picking J.D. Vance to be Donald Trump's running mate. He started betting on him 5 months before he was selected, when Polymarket was only giving Vance a 2% chance. What did you see that made you think, oh, he might pick J.D. Vance?
So that goes back to 2016 when he picked Mike Pence. And buried in one of the articles for why he picked Mike Pence is that Mike Pence had a one-syllable name. And Trump has a one-syllable name, and Trump is very into marketing. And so I was looking at the names, and I was like, who is one syllable? And not only is Vance one syllable, he's only 2 letters off of Pence.
So you bet $4,000 and you ended up winning $250,000?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a smart play.
It is a good bet. Yeah.
The fact that people are putting their money where their mouths are means that many people actually consider these markets to be a better predictor of political outcomes than polling or expert analysis by any one individual or company. You get the wisdom of crowds, and also you get people who, there's actually feedback based on whether their decision is or their prediction is correct or not. And Polymarket did win kudos for correctly predicting, or for protecting the probability as implied on Polymarket suggested that Trump would win the US presidential election while polls were still calling it a dead heat. And that's one reason why media companies are now striking deals with prediction markets. So this is a tweet from Kalshi. CNN partners with Kalshi to integrate prediction markets into its global newsroom, the first major news network to embrace Kalshi prediction markets. A new era of media is here. Now, that was tweeted on Wednesday, so it said this is the first announcement. Less than 24 hours later, Kalshi's second major media link-up was announced. The company put out this accompanying video.
And I'd like to welcome you to the most significant programming effort, the Consumer News and Business Channel, CNBC.
We'll take you live to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Microsoft carrying the world literally all night.
There's a lot of stuff that's .com that's going to be .nothing 6 months from now.
This is the big, hold on, everyone. We've been waiting for this.
I think we're at the bottom. I really do.
Obviously is. I think Kalshi now.
Kalshi.
The idea of building the most important financial market on the planet, you see it with the mayor race 2 days ago, and people joined for that mission, for building that financial market.
The Kalshi odds that have our chances of victory in the 90s.
So the argument there, it used to be that there were these analysts who would sort of say we're at the bottom of the market. Now people can just say, well, Kalshi says we're at the bottom of the market, and that will be better because there's the wisdom of crowds, yada, yada, yada. What really struck out to me from that video, though, was the tagline at the end, if you're listening on podcast, you won't have seen it, which was tomorrow's headlines today. And what that immediately reminded me of was Tomorrow Never Dies, the James Bond movie. Have you seen it?
I have, of course I have, yeah.
So in that movie, if you haven't seen it, that's where you've got a news company kind of based on Rupert Murdoch who is making big world events happening so that they can be the first to report on them. And their tagline was tomorrow's news today. So are we worried that people are going to make big bets on political outcomes and then go to great lengths to make those political outcomes happen is one question. But I'll throw to you for the broader discussion. What do you make of these prediction markets?
So you saw CNBC there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another partner is CNN. CNN was the world's first ever 24-hour news channel. First ever. Started by Ted Turner. Great guy. Progressive figure in the US. Really interesting politics. He used to be called the Mouth from the South. Really gobby guy. I think he owned a basketball team. He was just a really big character. Democrat. I think he paid off America's debt to the United Nations at one point. He just paid it off himself because he was like, this is embarrassing for our country. Really interesting guy. And I feel that he's a bit like in Terminator 2, Miles Dyson, the guy who inadvertently creates the Terminator. He creates Skynet. And they have to kill that dude. And he's like, why are you trying to kill me? It's like, you're responsible for ending mankind. I feel like Ted Turner, a very good man, he's still alive, progressive figure. When he started a 24-hour news channel, he began something which we still haven't really got our heads around. If you look at social media, X, all of it, it's based upon the rhythm and the method and the dynamics of 24-hour news. So that's from 1980. And now they're partnering with 24-hour gambling, 24-hour addiction, 24-hour attention. Humankind has built a planetary exoskeleton, which is what they are, 5G satellites, right? We built a planetary exoskeleton, all kinds of satellites, in order to create hundreds of millions, if not billions, of addicts addicted to social media. I'm addicted to social media. Maybe you are. You're a pretty good guy, actually, on that front. Addicted to social media, addicted to gambling, addicted to pornography, addicted to online retail. Addicts, addicts, addicts. We've built this exoskeleton for addiction, adverts, attention. I think, given the miracle of the internet, and by the way, it is a miracle, maybe we could do something slightly better than betting markets for how many tweets Michael Walker is going to put out between January and February 2026. I must also add, though, looking at some of that stuff, I'm thinking, you know what? Whoa, I wouldn't mind that. 20 quid punt on who's going to be the Metro mayor for, Hampshire. Oh, that's not happening now, is it, till 2028? I'll do it in 2028. So I can see the allure of it, and I'm not diminishing that. That's very real. But this says something really big about where we are with capitalism. And people use that term late-stage capitalism, right? I don't generally like it because who knows what stage we're in. But it does feel kind of weird. I just want a country that makes stuff and builds stuff. I look at China, I'm thinking, let's do more of that. I don't want 24-hour betting sites working with news organizations that I can just access within 5 seconds of waking up. That feels to me like a dysfunctional political and economic model.
So I suppose there's two, like the link up. I mean, I agree with you. You know what I think about smartphones and everyone having these sort of attention suckers in their pockets. But the link up, I suppose, can be in two different ways, which is, I suppose, what happens with sports and sports betting is you watch the sports and then the sports betting company sponsors the sports channel so that you're watching the football, and then in the adverts you're thinking, I'll place a bet.
Yeah.
And so both parties are winning because they're getting sponsorship money.
That's really new, though,
and
to
then,
be clear.
Yeah, and then Bet365 or whatever, they're getting your money because you're gambling on the game. So this could be sort of CNN saying, we've just shown you our analysis of the elections, and then a big advert comes up to say, who do you want to bet on? Maybe you could now bet on the American presidential election. I think what they're trying to present it as is that these prediction markets are a new, genuine, useful tool in terms of predicting the future, just in the same way that the Times has a link up with YouGov. And I'm sure CNN has a link up with a particular polling company. Definitely a lot of them had link ups with 538, didn't they? Nate Silver's company. So they'd say, this isn't us trying to encourage our audiences to bet on the political events we're talking about. It is us using this prediction market as a tool of better informing our viewers as to what is likely to happen in the coming months and years.
Two things. Isn't that bad? I want somebody to think for themselves. Oh, I would like this person to lead the country, therefore I will vote for them. Instead, where we've been for the last goodness knows how long, well, all the polling says that this guy can't win and this person's not electable and that policy is really unpopular. Well, something's unpopular until it's popular. Leaving the European Union wasn't a popular policy position. It certainly wasn't a majority position in 2000. It was by 2016 because people campaigned in a democratic way. You can say there was ups and downs and maybe some people said some things which weren't true. But that's the process of democracy. That's the first thing. Secondly, there are huge incentives for media organizations, news organizations to jump on this. You're absolutely right. You should care about the news because you should care about politics, and you should care about politics because you should care about who's governing you, right? You don't have the luxury of not caring about politics because, as I think it was Plato, maybe it was Aristotle that said this, if you don't care about politics, well, you better get used to stupid people governing you. And I feel like that's the reason why people should care about politics, because they care about their own lives and the context in which their lives unfold. And instead, you've now got CNN and CNBC saying, no, you should care about politics because it means that you can bet on stuff, right? It'll give you a little dopamine hit to bet on Gavin Newsom beating J.D. Vance at the next presidential election. No, an American should care about that race because it's going to impact their life in really meaningful ways. That's literally what politics is meant to be. People should care about politics because it has meaning on their lives, not because they're going to make a $20 margin on betting on this guy rather than that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the case for it, or the case for taking betting markets seriously, let's say. Have you read Super Forecasting by Philip Tetlock?
I've breezed over it. I haven't read it.
It was made famous because Dominic Cummings sort of asked all the civil servants to read it. But it is very interesting. And basically, his argument is to say, so sort of his initial research was into political judgment. So he, did a study where he'd sort of go around and ask all of these political scientists, all of these columnists, to sort of make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. And he said they were kind of worse than if you were just, I think he says, sort of like a monkey throwing a dartboard or something. They had no bearing at all with reality. It's not that they were actively wrong, they just weren't any sort of better than if you just flicked a coin or if you just asked anyone on the street corner. And his argument was that this isn't because these people are stupid, it's because in the political commentary industry or in academia, there is no accountability mechanism whereby you really need to be right. Sort of what you need to do is you need to tell a convincing story to your audience. When it comes to political media, often you've got to tell a story that your audience already agree with, because you want to keep them happy. And so he's saying that means that there's sort of no relationship between this whole industry of political expertise and reality. And what he does is he sets up these sort of prediction competitions. They sort of do them in the American intelligence community, where he says that this means that you have some accountability. Lots of political, like Matt Iglesias does it on his Substack now. At the end of the year, he sort of makes a bunch of predictions with percentages and then says that's keeping him accountable because at the end of next year, he can judge how he did. I do think there's something to it. I think it's interesting. We'll talk about that in one moment, but let's first go to the owners of these firms who are kind of saying or the argument I'm putting forward, they're saying is true, right? So they are, of course, they don't want to say we're just making everything into a betting machine. We're not just out here to make money. They're saying this is a useful project which in some way can further humanity. This is the CEO of Polymarket on 60 Minutes.
It's a site where you can basically bet on current events. Some sort of question about the future, like an election. And as a result, when a ton of people are betting, you get the betting odds, which basically tell you how likely each outcome is.
And how accurate is it?
It's the most accurate thing we have as mankind right now, until someone else creates some sort of super crystal ball.
Another clip now from the other CEO. So this is another part of the original clip we showed you, Tariq Mansour, Kalshi's CEO.
We are living in a world where we have an abundance of information, but there's a lot of noise, and we don't really understand what's real from what's not. And prediction markets are an antidote to that. They do a very, very good job at distilling information and surfacing truth to people. And you're seeing this sort of massive shift where people are using them whenever they think about questions about the future, whenever they're debating about anything. And I think that trajectory is going to keep going.
Just one more point before I go to you. This kind of reminded me of something that Gary Stevens had said in an interview to you before, where he was saying the one thing he liked about the trading floor compared to the economics department at Oxford is you got respect if your predictions came true. Whereas at a university or on the pages of a newspaper, you get respect if you can spin a good story. And so, I mean, I think these things should probably be regulated out of existence because I just don't like gambling in general. And I think there's just lots of sort of potential avenues for insider trading, corruption, that I think probably the negatives outweigh the positives. But I also do take seriously the idea that when people are putting their money where their mouth is, they will have a different approach to predictions than columnists, than YouTubers, than academics. I suppose I have a lot of skepticism when it comes to sort of the epistemology of political analysis.
100%. Put your money where your mouth is, as they say. 100%. When Gary said that to me, he was saying that, look, Robert Peston or this or that pundit can be wrong 10 times out of 10, and it doesn't matter. If I'm wrong once or twice, I'm out of the door. And that's true. And another thing he said, which really sticks in my mind, is the best economists on earth are people you've never heard of and you'll never meet, because they're working for very, very valuable organizations, the most prestigious banks, investment funds, asset managers in the world, and they're making them a ton of money. The information they have, the insights that they have are extraordinarily valuable. Why on earth do you think they would give it to you for free? Why would they do that? So instead you get the dross, you get the slop. Now, of course, the BBC and ITV and Sky, they say, we're not the slop, we are the elite, we're the real information, right? And I think he's absolutely right. That is not the real information. The real information is what's informing prices and resource allocation. We have no idea what's going on because it's being done by people who don't talk in front of a camera, right? And that's one of the great things about Gary Stevenson. It's why he now has 1 million followers on Instagram, 1 million YouTube subscribers. So that's true. That's true. If we were just having betting markets on certain things, I possibly wouldn't even mind. My big problem, I've got 2 big problems, just to be clear, just to repeat what I said a moment ago. And I know you don't like repetition, so I'll be quick. One is the addiction thing. But secondly, how does this frame politics, Michael? Already because of capitalist realism, the realm of possibility is so constrained by elites. This person isn't, Trump wasn't electable, right? That's what the entire establishment determined until he won. Mamdani, not electable until he wins. You see this time after time after time, after time. Henry Ford had a great quote. If I gave the market what they wanted, I would have made a faster horse and cart. He invented the car. Nobody could have predicted the car because it wasn't building on what was already there. It was a genuine innovation. So, yes, I see the place of these. Maybe in some respects it'll be better than legacy media because it will reward people who are correct. But at the same time, I think it's going to have really negative consequences for how we consider the future. How do we conceive of the future? How will it be different to today?
Have you, we're going to move on to our next story in a moment, but just to pick you up on, is this a legacy media problem? Because I think it's potentially even worse on YouTube. Because I think probably the biggest cognitive bias is saying what your audience want to hear.
Audience capture.
Audience capture.
It's slightly different, but it's also a problem, right? And lots of new media have the issue of audience capture. A lot. And the nicest thing that people say to me, and maybe people are watching this going, I hate Aaron Bastani. The nicest thing people say to me is sometimes I have no idea what you're going to say on something. And that's important. If there's a pundit, or there's a thinker or a YouTuber or a podcaster, and I know exactly what they're going to say on any given position, why on earth would I watch them? They're not going to make me think. I love engaging with people who I disagree with on, say, 80% of stuff, and then 20% of the time they really make me think. For me, those are the most valuable people to engage with. But you're absolutely right. The idea that independent media, and we're part of that, and I don't think we're subject to audience capture, but it's there for any organization in new media for sure. Audience capture is a real thing. Do I think it's as bad? I don't know, Michael. It's easy to forget how bad legacy media's coverage was of Labour for the 2017 election, or its treatment of Trump. They genuinely thought before 2016 it was a physical impossibility. It was like trying to defy gravity for Trump to win. HuffPo famously gave him a 3% chance of winning. This is an election between 2 people. Any reasonable betting market would say, well, that's an outlandish series of odds to give. So, yeah, of course, legacy media has problems, new media has problems, but I think in new media, if you're wrong consistently, you get punished a heck of a lot quicker than if you're at the BBC or the FT. There are some people, I won't name names, they've been wrong about pretty much everything for the last 25 years, and we all get things wrong. They've been wrong about pretty much everything for the last 25 years, and they still seem to be on BBC Question Time and writing the op-eds and the leader articles for some of the biggest papers in the country.